This is the second part of an introduction to SketchPath-Pro by Phil Firon. This is continued from part 1. Right, that concludes that part on variables. What else shall I show you? You've had a look at how I've actually typed in an expression and then debugged it. The other thing that you can do is you can auto-generate an XPath location that can help start off an expression. One way of doing that is by using just a find. So if, for example, I was interested in a unit, I could type unit in my search, and that takes any regular expression. And so this shows me all the unit strings within here. And just clicking on those will take me to those. But the interesting thing is that as I select that, the XPath location is copied immediately under the XPath editor. So I could quickly copy that into the XPath editor if I needed that particular expression, like so. Also, to auto-generate an expression, you can't just double-click within your XML. So just to show, say I wanted the publisher, double-click on that, and that puts in a predicate which tests for that value. The other way of doing it, if you actually want the value itself, is you can click on the node that is shown here. So that gives me the text node within the element. Right, I'll just show you a bit more about Intellisense. You saw how it was automatically prompting me by selecting from, there are actually 5 sublists within Intellisense. So as we move, it actually chooses, depending on what you type, it switches to operator because I've typed a D. But if its nearest match is a function, it will go to functions. Or if it's an axis, it goes to the axis. And to autocomplete, I just click tab, and then it will move on to whatever is expected next. So there, I can type in item whatever. Now, as well as that, you can override that behavior, but just by clicking on whichever sublist you're interested in. So the other thing, so if I just carry on with item, for example, and I go to cast as, it knows that I need XML type here, schema type, so it automatically brings up the schema list. So I could cast item as a string. One thing you'll notice as well is you don't type in the prefixes for auto completion, it does the prefixes for you. The other thing, now I've talked about namespaces, let's quickly, if I go back and select a file with a namespace, there actually aren't that many in that folder, but if I select here, these are HTML files, so they're actually in the XHTML namespace. So if I click on this XML tab, it shows me the namespaces here, and you can the XHTML there is the default namespace, but I can change that to be my own namespace if I choose. So like that. Now that I've changed that prefix, it means in the element tree you will see that prefix used instead. The source remains the same in the XML view, but just as a hint, the tree view will show you the new prefix that you're declaring for that namespace. And of course that also means that if we go back to start typing in an XPath expression, we end up being prompted with the new namespace that we've declared rather than the one that's in the source, like so. And also as you click in here and you auto-generate expressions, it will use the namespace that you've declared. Right, let's just go back to Files and select our previous folder that we were looking at. And I'm going to go in and select a file. Now this file is interesting because there's a schema location declared here, books.xsd. So if I look in XML, it shows that, and it shows that it's actually found that within the input folder. Just quickly, for schemas and also for DTDs, you can control, if they're not actually co-located with the file, you can provide hints within the environment. So I could put in extra paths here where SketchPath-Pro would look if it didn't find a file immediately located with the source file. And these are the DTDs that are preloaded with SketchPath-Pro, but you can add your own DTDs as well. Okay, let's go back to this view here. Now, because I've loaded a file, with schema location, this XSD button shows up here, and I can click on that, and it will validate that against the XSD, and it shows up green because it's valid. Let's choose a file that isn't quite as valid as that, and now that turns red because I've chosen a different file, and I can actually then click on the items that aren't valid, like so. Right, let's just pause a moment to look at what we've covered. So if I go back to where we were, which is there, and go to our next slide. So we've covered Intellisense. We've seen that auto-evaluation happens as we type. We've gone through the XML viewer. There are HTML and Office viewers as well. We've seen how XPath is auto-generated. We've used the editing toolbar in that we've clicked on Save, but there are a number of other items on that toolbar which are fairly self-explanatory. We've gone through the results list. We've talked about the evaluation context so far as the namespace declarations. We haven't talked about the context node. I'll do that just in a bit. And we've shown how you save an expression, and you save it to a particular group. I'll just go through those last two items again, though, because I want to add a bit more detail. So, first of all, the context node. The easiest way to set a context node is, let's just go back to one way of putting in the context node, say we want the context node to be the first item, this one here. So you've got an expression here, and you can just click this to set the XPath context. And now that's highlighted in the toolbar. So if I remove that expression now, you'll see that the Intellisense is based on what the context node is. The other thing that you'll see is that there's a little house icon here associated with that item element, because that's indicating that that's the context. So that shows you anyway a bit more about how you can use the Intellisense manually, but the main point of that was to actually illustrate setting the context node. The other way to quickly set the context node is by double clicking on any element within the element tree, and that automatically sets it. So if I double click on that, you'll see